Hello and welcome. I hope you're all doing great, and I'm so glad that everyone could join us tonight. And first of all, I'd like to introduce myself because I'm also a guest here. My name is Ari, and I'm the founder of Ari Polyglot. Today, I'm here instead of Dr. Wrya, and I'd like to thank Mamosta Andy, and also thank you for being able to come here tonight. Yes, welcome, Mamosta Andy, and how are you?
Thank you, Mamosta Ari. I'm so glad to be with you all. And yeah, it's really my privilege to join you all.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Mama Sandy is a native English teacher, and also he's a trainer, leadership trainer. Tonight he's going to present a very important topic. He's going to present a very important presentation about a topic. But before we started with Mama Sandy, I would like to thank everyone for being able to come here and remind you about the Breaking Boundaries rules. As you know, we have members all around the world, so it's like a melting pot place. It's very diverse. We have many members with different backgrounds, like religious backgrounds, culture, and language. So the rules are going to be no religion topics or no politics. It's because just to keep things personal, just to keep personal things personal. And now I'd like to start with Mama Sandy. I would love for you to introduce myself and present your presentation.
Thank you so much, Mamosta Andy. And my thanks to Breaking Boundaries, to Mamosta Wrya for the opportunity to present today. My name is Andrew Wilkinson. I am also known by the name Mamosta Andy. I'm an American originally, but my parents were teachers overseas for many of the years when I was growing up. And so I grew up in between the US and another country called Papua New Guinea. And then when I was in university back in the US, I had the opportunity to come to Kurdistan to work for 1 year while I was in university. And I just loved my experience there. And it was my dream to come back and work. And so later, with my family, I was able to come back and work in Slemani for about 5 years and Erbil for about 2 years, doing mainly English education, English language teaching, as well as leadership development training. So some of you might be familiar with the Life Center in Slemani. I worked with them, or the Hiwa Center in Erbil, or the organization GLI, Global Leadership International. So that's just a little bit about my background. While I was there, I studied Sorani Kurdish, and I'm just someone, I love language. I love culture, learning, talking, discussing differences between languages, cultures, history, but I also love education. And so really my talk today is stepping away a little bit from English education. And really, it's meant to be a topic to equip anyone who themselves is a teacher or who may be a writer or have any kind of job or role where you present publicly, whether that is presenting through speaking, presenting through video or audio, or presenting through the written word, any area of public communication. So that is who I'm hoping to serve today through this talk. And just want to say thank you again. And I hope that it is beneficial. So let's get started. I'd like to begin my talk today with some questions for you to think about. Would you like to be someone who could organize your thoughts and present them in a powerful way, anytime, anywhere, and with anyone? If you were in a situation where someone needed to stand up and present, to speak, to write, to convince a crowd, would you be the kind of person who feels free and confident to do this, even if you have very little time for preparation? What if a group of people depended on you to point them in the right direction, or to convince them to do what is right, or to help them solve their problems? Could you speak up and help them? Or does the very thought of being put in this position make you feel anxious, nervous? Do you feel like you don't know where to start when you need to prepare a talk or to write an essay? Now, many of us have heard powerful speeches. We've heard compelling presentations. We've written or read beautifully written articles. We've felt the effect of these things on our minds. We felt the effect of these things on our emotions. But if we're honest, we ourselves often don't know how to build this kind of speech, how to craft this kind of presentation, how to read this kind of article. How to write this kind of article. We don't know what happens behind the scenes in order to communicate effectively. We might not know how to build a speech. We might not know how to build a presentation, a lesson, or a piece of writing so that it is powerful and it leaves an impact on our listeners' minds and their hearts and their actions. But what if I told you that there is a basic formula that masters of communication, such as Aristotle even, have been using for thousands of years, and that this is a formula that you can learn also? This is a simple framework for communication that anyone can learn, that can take your public communication to the next level and make you someone who's able to communicate publicly and confidently. Today, my goal is simply to teach you this timeless formula for impactful content delivery. At the end of my presentation, my hope is that each of you know, understand, and remember this formula so that you can become a more powerful teacher, presenter, video creator, or writer. Now, this formula and its individual parts have had different names over the centuries. If anything has been used for more than 2,000 years, it's going to have different names, different titles. But in order to remember it easily, I like to call this formula the media formula. The media formula. And this is my main point today. The media formula is a timeless and effective way to communicate powerfully in a public setting. If someone asks you what this talk was about today, I hope that you'll be able to remember this main idea. The media formula is a timeless and effective way to communicate powerfully in a public setting. So, what is the media formula? Let's explain it. Let's break it down together. Each of the letters in this name, media, each represents one word, one part of the formula. M stands for main point. E stands for explanation. D stands for defense. I stands for illustration. And A stands for application. So main point, explanation, defense, illustration, and application. This acronym has 5 parts. It's a memory tool, and it's a simple way to remember each of these 5 main parts of effective public communication. And these letters, I like them because they also serve as a map when you're starting to write or prepare your presentation or your article or your video. They help you know, where should I start and where should I go next in my preparation process, as well as guiding your presentation. That's a basic explanation of what the media formula is. Now I want to talk with you about why this formula is important. Each of the 5 parts in this formula represent one very important aspect of effective communication and persuasion. That means that each of these 5 parts are important for communicating in a way that will, 1, serve, but also convince your audience, which is full of complex human beings. First, human beings are busy and we are forgetful. Usually we can only remember 1 or 2 main ideas from a talk or an article or a video. This is why you need to emphasize the main point repeatedly. This is the job of the main point of the formula. Second, humans have brains that are always looking for clear meaning in things. We're always looking to understand, to find patterns, to find meaning. So it's very important that you clearly explain the meaning of your main point, that you provide a detailed definition of your main point. This is what the explanation part of the formula does. This is the part where you show people that they can trust you and that you have done your research and you know what you are talking about. Aristotle called this part of public speaking ethos, by which he meant credibility. Credibility, the ability to be believed. Third, humans do not only have brains that need something explained clearly, they're also people with busy brains and busy lives. We have many priorities. We have limited resources. We need to know why this matters, why this is important. And we need to have our questions and our objections answered. These questions get answered in the part of the formula that I call defense. Aristotle called this part logos, by which he meant logical argumentation. Fourth, in addition to this, humans are also people with bodies, with senses, with emotions. They need to know what an idea looks like, what it feels like, and they need to connect with an idea emotionally. This is where illustration comes in. Aristotle called this part pathos, by which he meant emotional appeal, speaking to the emotions of your audience. Fifth, humans are also practical. They need to know, what do I actually do with this main point? What do I actually do with this information? How can I translate these concepts, these ideas into action? How can I apply them? And this is what the final step, application, does for us. The media formula matters because it helps you to communicate in a fuller way, in a way that addresses all these very important parts of a human being. That's why it's important to learn how to communicate publicly in this kind of a way. Now, for many years, I've been an English teacher. Right now, my work focuses mainly on creating online videos for English students. So let's say that I want to prepare a longer video lesson about a common mistake that my students in Northern Iraq make when they're speaking English. For example, translating idioms directly into another language can be a common mistake and can get you into all kinds of trouble because idioms don't always translate directly. Usually they have a special meaning only in one language. You have to find another idiom in another language that has that same meaning. So if someone wants to say, my English is smoking, İngilizcem dukalakat in Kurdish, which is a way to say, oh, my English is so bad today. It's really struggling. This is a negative thing to say in Kurdish, but here's the problem. If you say this in English, it has the exact opposite meaning. I say, oh, my English is smoking today. That means, wow, my English is amazing today. Okay, so this is a common mistake. If I want to teach this to my students in a video, I could spend the whole lesson just explaining this mistake, explaining how my students should correct it. I could just explain, okay, don't say my English is smoking in English. Instead, you should say, my English is struggling, or my English is rusty. I could make a list of why the mistake is wrong. I could make a list of the correct way to do things. And many teachers do this. They only explain. They only give information. This can make them sometimes boring. This can make them less effective as teachers. And this can make their students more likely to forget or maybe to dismiss what they have taught. Instead, what would it look like for a teacher like me to use the media formula to teach about this mistake that I told you about? First, I should summarize the information into a short, memorable main point, no longer than one sentence. This is the M in our formula, remember? Main point. For example, I could say, my English is struggling is the clearest way to communicate that you're feeling negative about your English ability. My English is struggling is the clearest way to communicate that you're feeling negative about your English ability. After this, I could explain this main point to them. I could help them see that the direct translation of the Kurdish smoking saying actually has an opposite meaning in English. So they need to use another saying that has an equal meaning, an equivalent meaning. This is the E explanation part of our formula. I'm defining my main point. I'm explaining it in more detail. Next, I could help them understand why this formula is important. For example, it's important because no one wants people to, I could help them understand why this main point is important. And I could tell them it's important because no one wants people to completely misunderstand their meaning. No one wants to say something with one meaning in mind and their audience to understand the complete opposite meaning. This is the D part of our formula called defense. I'm telling them why this is important. After this, I could tell a story about a time when I was in the city of Kalar, about 3 hours south of Slemani, and I was trying to speak Kurdish and communicate that the food my friend's mom had made was delicious. But I was a new Kurdish speaker and I didn't know the difference between be and ba in front of a word, without versus with. And so instead of saying balazada, khwardnaka zor balazada, is that the food is very delicious, I said khwardnaka zor belazada. The food is so undelicious. It's so without taste. And I remember my friend's mom stopping as she picked up the food and looking at me like, is that really what he meant to say? And I was so embarrassed. I'm sure the color of my face changed. My friend just laughed at me. Thankfully, his mom laughed. She thought it was very funny. And I learned a very important grammar lesson that day. But this was a situation where I had tried to communicate one meaning and someone had understood a completely opposite meaning. This is the I, the story. If I told my students this story about Kalar, this would be the I section of our formula, illustration, helping them to connect emotionally with my topic. And finally, I could tell my students what to do with this information, the A, the application part of this formula. For example, I could tell them, okay, for homework, write down on a piece of paper, Inglizia kam du kalakat equals my English is struggling. And my English is smoking equals my English is amazing. And then I could tell them, make two lists. One list of things that are struggling, one list of skills or abilities that you have that you feel like are not strong, that are struggling, and another list of things that you feel like are struggling, or I'm sorry, of things that are smoking, things that are amazing. So these steps that I just described, that's one way that I, as a teacher, that I could use this media formula to teach this simple English lesson about this mistake. So how can you who are on this call today, how can you actually use this media formula as you are preparing a lesson, speech, an article, or a video script? First, write down on paper 5 sections, one for each letter of the word media. Remember, main point, explanation, defense, illustration, and application. Write this down on paper and start by finding your main points. The main point is the big idea of your talk, the big idea of your video or of your article. You, the communicator, need to be able to write down your main points in a way that's clear and in a sentence that's easy to understand and remember. It's amazing how many times someone goes to give a talk or to write an article and they are not clear themselves what their main point is. And I guarantee you, if you as the communicator, if you cannot say in a brief sentence what your main point is, your audience will not be able to know your main point either. So this is a very important part of your preparation. And here's a good test for writing your main point. If your audience remembers only one thing from your talk or article, what is the one thing that you want them to remember? That should be your main point. So even if that's different from the main point that you were planning on speaking on, bringing those two things together is very helpful. What is the one thing that you want your audience to remember from your talk or your article? And that should be your main point. Second, write several sentences or a paragraph explaining what you mean by your main point. Basically, what is it? Define it. Describe what you mean by it in clear and simple language. Third, ask yourself, why is your main point important? Why does it matter? And spend some time thinking about common objections or questions that people might have about this main point. That's your argumentation section, your defense section. Fourth, think about a story or an illustration that helps your audience to really see, to feel, or to experience your main point. And last, write down how this should change someone's life, how this should change their thoughts, how this could change their actions. How does this main point change what someone actually thinks or what they actually do? How do they carry out this information? How do they apply it in the real world? At this point, you're also free. Once you've written these 5 sections down on paper, you're free then to decide what is the most effective order for these points. You don't have to keep the same order as we remember them in the media formula. But some people, for example, they like to start with a story. They like to start with an illustration to really hook their audience and get their attention. The order of the media formula, it's not as important as making sure that you have all 5 parts. However, I do recommend that you get to your main point and the explanation of your main point quickly in the beginning. If you wait too long to get to your main point and to the explanation of your main point, you might lose some of your listeners as they get confused about what you're actually talking about. However, the positions, especially of defense, illustration, and application, these are more flexible. You can move these around according to the needs of your audience, according to your own personal preference, or according to the needs of your particular piece of communication. Also, you should know that if your presentation or video has more than one important point, then you can use each part of this formula for each of your main points or each of your sub points. So for example, in a classic 3-point essay, you want to repeat this media formula for each of the 3 points. However, without going into too much detail today, the main thing that I want you to do going forward is to experiment with this media formula in the places where you are communicating publicly. Try it out. Try using this tool as you are preparing a lesson, as you are preparing a video or an article or a speech, and see if it helps your public communication to become more effective. Speakers for over 2,000 years, public communicators for over 2,000 years have been using these ingredients to become more effective in their public communication. And so I do believe it will help you, as it has helped me many, many times in all kinds of situations over the last 15 years. Some of you may have noticed today, I actually structured my talk with the same formula. After my introduction, I started by telling you my main point, which was the media formula is a timeless and effective way to communicate powerfully in a public setting. And then I told you what the media formula was. I spent some time explaining it. After that, I told you why it was important because of the different parts of the humans who are listening to you. Then I told you the illustration of the English mistake of saying my English is smoking and what the media formula looks like, what it feels like to use it in that situation. After that, I told you how to get practical with the media formula and what you can actually do with it after you leave this session. So, in conclusion, our formula is called media. Main point, explanation, defense, illustration, and application. This formula is a timeless and effective way to communicate powerfully in a public setting. And it's my hope that each of you will be able to grow as an effective public communicator, and that now you are more equipped because you know about this powerful tool. So thank you so much for your time today and letting me present on this topic.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mamosta Andy. It was so amazing and it was so informative. And now let's move to the audience and let's see who has any questions about the topic. We have like Helen, Miran Hadi, Sapiro, Ryan, Sinar, Shadia, Soran, and Sozan, guys. If you have any questions about the topic, you can ask Mamosta Andy. Okay, until my audience get ready, Mamosta Andy, I have a question.
Yes.
And I believe my question is related to art of teaching. So for me, as a polyglot and an English teacher, I believe that when we enter a classroom and we want to explain a lesson, we're not only explaining the lesson, but at the same time, we are conveying mindsets. And as Dr. Carol Dweck says, we have two types of mindsets. The first one is called growth mindset, and the second one is called fixed mindset. So what do I mean by growth mindset? Growth mindset, when you make students believe that they are able to improve their abilities and also can develop their abilities. On the other hand, we have fixed mindset that students can't or they are unable or can't do to develop their abilities. And my question is that how we are as English teachers are going to be able to convey this type of mindset, growth mindset, more and more while we're teaching the classrooms, because it's very important for students to boost their potential abilities. And
That's right.
Unfortunately, a lot of teachers are not aware about these two types of mindsets. And I want you to give an explanation about it, because I think that's so useful and that's so important for teachers to know it.
Yeah, thank you for that important question. And really, the growth mindset is something that is so important for learners in any field, or really just for living a good life. Even the growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset is so important. One practical way that teachers can help their students believe that the growth mindset is not just empty talk, but it's real, it's practical, is the teachers can ask questions about two different things that students need. So usually when students are feeling stuck, when they're in a fixed mindset and they're feeling stuck, they need one of these two different sorts of things. One is tools or resources. And the other thing is motivation. And it's amazing when students are feeling stuck, feeling like they're stuck in a fixed mindset. I can't grow. I don't believe that I can shift into this growth mindset. If a good teacher begins to ask specific questions about these two areas, to say, what is the problem? Do you have the tools that you need to facilitate your growth? The tools tools function like a trellis. A trellis is that wooden structure that grapes grow on, a cupper. And we need these tools. We need these frameworks, these resources. So what I've presented tonight in the media formula, this is a tool. Someone might be in a fixed mindset. No, I can't be a good public communicator. It's impossible. I don't know where to start. I just freeze. Say, well, do you have any tools for being a public communicator? Let me give you a tool. And maybe that will free them up and they will be able to shift into a growth mindset. The other side is motivation. Sometimes our students, they have the tools and the resources that they need. They are lacking in motivation. And this is trickier, right? Helping people grow in motivation is difficult. How do you help the human heart and the human mind? And I think from this and the motivation front, we need to realize we're dealing with holistic people here. They have health. Maybe their health is factoring into this. Maybe it's the way they're thinking, their psychology. Maybe it's their environments. How can we try to address the whole person? Maybe they just need some encouragement. They just need their teacher to give them, be the one who is the lead encourager in their life. If they've never had it, maybe their family says, you'll never learn English. And that's what they've heard forever. And they need someone who will give them that opposite message that will boost that motivation. So I think these are two practical ways to move people into a growth mindset. Everything, many things need support to grow. We think of grapevines; they need a cupboard, right? They need a trellis. Other things, like a pomegranate tree, it doesn't need support in the beginning, but once it starts growing these fruits, these pomegranates, then the branches get too heavy, and you need to support it.
Right.
So no matter where you are on your journey of learning, you're going to find problems. You're going to encounter problems of motivation and problems of tools or resources. And so a wise teacher, a wise coach or mentor will always be looking to help in both of these areas. And I think this really helps us make the growth mindset practical.
Exactly. Thank you so much for answering that question. And also, I would like to add something reflecting on what you said. So whenever I have smart students, and let's say those students who are not good enough, I'm going to praise their hard working and the effort that they are putting in. I'm telling my smart students that you are smart because you are doing this and this and this. And that's going to be clear for the other students. If he's going to do the same exact things, he's going to be the same. And also, I always tell my students who are not good enough at English, you're good, but not yet. And that not yet gives them a hope to work harder and harder. Eventually, they're going to be the same as the first student. And also, we have some chats and messages in the chat section. I'm going to. We have. Yeah, she says, no, thank you. Everything was clear. And we have Shadia. I'm here to enhance my listening skills and get more information about your class. And we have Ryan. She has a question. How to be confident when we make a seminar? I always feel shy, so that make me speaking fast. I can resonate with one too.
Yeah, public people, research has shown that people are more afraid of public speaking than they are afraid of death. Right? It's the number one fear in the world. I myself have had seasons of getting anxiety attacks when I'm speaking in public. Overwhelming anxiety that means I have to sit down or I will not be able to finish my talk. So I understand the struggle. Anxiety in public speaking is very real. So what can we do to become confident? I do think that being prepared is very important. So if you follow something like the media formula in your preparation, then you're not anxious about, well, have I prepared in a way that's going to be clear? Have I prepared in a way that's going to be interesting? You will be able to put that anxiety aside. So preparation is a big part. Experience is also another big part. We all have to grow as public speakers simply through doing it. We have to put in our put in our dozens of hours or hundreds of hours doing this, and then you get better and better as you do it. And practicing, I think practicing as well. I always, when I prepare something, I always read it out loud to myself multiple times before I present it, because I want to, when I want to edit it, I want to find out, does this sound right? Are there mistakes? Does this sound natural? But it also gives me a sense of the timing, right? The time. You say one of your problems is you're going too fast. Well, when you're reading it beforehand out loud to yourself, you can actually practice. Okay, this is a place where I think maybe I should pause. Pause for dramatic effect, right? You can even write that in your notes. You know, remind yourself in your notes, write a parentheses after every paragraph, slow down, right? Whatever you need as a public speaker. I often have to remind myself in my English classes to slow down. Because I'm speaking too quickly for my students. Even today, you know, what I normally do is I'll normally have people, I'll say, please raise your hand if I'm speaking too fast. And because I need that reminder sometimes to slow down, just so that my English can be clear, my speech can be understandable. So, yes, I hope that helps with your question. Confidence is, it takes experience, it takes preparation, it takes practice. And then ultimately, I think it takes being kind and compassionate with yourself. You want to be aware, what are the negative voices that you're listening to in your own mind that are telling you, what's the message you're hearing? Many people, when they get up to speak, the message they're hearing is, you're a fake person, you're a fraud. And that message is just on repeat in there. Everyone will know you're a fake. And that's just going in your mind over and over and over again. Well, we need to learn how to answer these negative messages with something like, I'm not a fake. I'm not a fraud. I am prepared and experienced. I am wise in this area. Or I'm an expert in this area. Or I don't have to be an expert in this area, but I am ahead of my audience in these ways. So responding with these, noticing this negative self-talk and responding with messages that are true, kind, respectful, compassionate messages about ourselves, this can be a huge part of it.
Yeah, thank you. Also, we've got another question here. We have Sozan Eresh. Yeah. Let me find it. No, it's not a question, I believe. Yeah. I'm here to learn more and more from you, teacher. I think I can get things easier from you more than anyone else. Yeah, that's not a question. We have Shadia. She has exactly, totally agree. Even if they couldn't give you a correct answer, but still teachers have to praise them. It will be helpful for students to try more. That's true. And also we have Helen. Mister, to be honest, I'm always getting so confused, or I forget everything when I talk English fast. An international school, so we have seminar, and sometimes I just don't do the seminar and sit down, or I get out of the school, and I don't know how to be okay speaking English fast. I hope you get the question, Mr. Andy. Shall I read it?
Yeah, the question makes sense. And it's one of the most common questions that I get asked is when I go to speak English, I get confused or I get stuck, and I felt my English ability was here, and then it goes down quickly. Really, I think that's part of what I said for the past answer. It is also relevant. Be aware of the internal negative messages that you might be listening to. Try to respond to those. On the practical fronts, nothing makes us confident in speaking another language more than having someone safe that you can practice with. If you have a tutor, if you have a friend who's ahead of you in English, if you have a tutor, whether they're a native speaker or not, someone where you feel very comfortable, very safe, making mistakes with. someone that you're meeting regularly with, that private conversation is going to give you the confidence in your language ability that is going to come out in your public communication as well. But you have to be building that confidence in private, in these private conversations. Many people, they're not having private conversations in English that feel comfortable. They're just studying in private on their own, and then they're going out in public and trying to use their English. Well, I would say get those conversations happening in private where you can be building that confidence, and it will spill into your public communication as well. So I tell many people, find a tutor or a friend that you can be practicing your conversation with. And the most important thing is it needs to be someone that you feel comfortable with making mistakes in front of.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Let me check the audience again. I believe Mr. Hadi has a question. Yes, Mr. Hadi, go ahead.
Mr. Miran?
Yeah. Mr. Miran, yeah. Mr. Miran Hadi.
Good evening, Mr. Wrya. Good evening, sir. Good evening for Mr. Andrew, I think. I hope all of you are okay. Thank you so much for everything, for every word that I learned from all of you. I'm honored to be with you today. Thank you so much for you, Mr. Wrya, for this amazing meeting. I want to add something, if you don't mind, Mr. Ari. I have something before learning English as we are in as we learn it in our college to be English teacher. Before we learn any language, whether that language is Kurdish or Arabic or Turkish or any language from our world, we should be accept each other. We should be accept how we are before we learn this language. So if we accept each other as we are, after that, if we make a mistake from each other, it's not a problem, because we are not angel, we are human, and human being all the time they make mistake, but they learn from that mistake in order to be better in the future.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
remember when I was in my college, they focused all the time on the 4 skills: reading, writing, and speaking and listening. These four skills, we can add another skills all the time. Our language is developing himself in order to make his student to be better in the future. In my side, I wanted to make this skills the 4 skills, and the 5 skills and I make the first skills accepting each other. If we accept each other from our heart, we can learn anything from heart to mind and to be better in our future. And thank you so much for all of you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mamosta Miran. I can agree. And Mr. Mamosta, did you have anything reflecting on what Mamosta Miran said?
I agree as well. There is such a need for this mutual acceptance in the context of language learning, but learning anything. Like you said, humans, we make mistakes. And so if you're in an environment where making mistakes is shameful, you're not going to be able to learn well. But if you are in an environment where mistakes are normal, even celebrated as evidence of growth and progress, I think that you will learn really well. We started a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and on purpose, we finish our podcast each episode by talking about one of our own language mistakes. We tell stories about how we made a mistake and how it was funny or it was embarrassing, because we want to make this more normal. We want people to feel more relaxed and more free to make mistakes. And instead of judging each other or instead of judging themselves, to be free to talk about it, laugh about it, even celebrate it as progress. So thank you for those for that insight, Mamosta Miran.
Yeah, thank you, Mamosta Andy. I believe in the first episode of your podcast, you talked about the Bokakan, like this joke, like this mistake you said.
Right.
It was very funny, actually. It just cracked me up.
Yeah, I accidentally told a taxi driver one day we live behind the Bokakani Baharan instead of the Shokakani Baharan. And he looked at me, he's very confused. He said, "You live behind the frogs of spring? Like, what do you mean?" No, not Bok. I mean Shoka. I mean apartment. Yeah, so these I never forgot the difference between apartment and frog after that situation, right?
Exactly. Yeah, also we have Mr. Soran. Yes, Mr. Soran, go ahead, please.
Hey guys, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
So that was the best way of delivering a message that I ever had. Congratulations and hats off, Mr. Andrew. Just wanted to emphasize, yeah, one point that I heard when you were talking about the way of writing a classic essay. You said that you can repeat the media, and my question is here that. So did you mean that I can repeat the media through the every single paragraph you meant, or just wanted to make sure that I get it correctly? You mean I can apply the media in every paragraph? So giving the main idea in the beginning of the paragraph, and then explain it, illustrate it, defense it, the way you mentioned it. Over.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question, and I want to clarify. I also write it in the notes here after I tell you verbally, so you can see what an outline can look like in writing. So for a 3-point essay, you would have your main idea for the talk or the written essay, and then underneath your main idea, you would have 3 sub points, 3 points. What you want to do for each of those points is to include each of the 5 aspects of the media formula. So you want to make sure that each of your sub points, that it has a clear main point, that it has a clear explanation, it has a clear defense, clear illustration, and a clear application. The length of this depends on what you're making, right? What you're preparing for. So if your talk is going to be 45 minutes long, for example, then you may need a paragraph for each of these 5 underneath your subpoints. If you are writing a shorter essay for someone to read in, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, then you maybe want to just have a sentence or 2 for each of these ingredients of the formula. But yes, so you would want to repeat it after each sub point. You could have a separate paragraph for them, but it depends on the length of what you are doing. So I'll write it here in the comment section as well in an outline form, so you can see. So main idea, and then point 1, then you have media, 2, media formula, point 3, then media formula. Sorry, misspelling. And what I didn't mention as well is a good way to structure a talk is, in the beginning you have a short introduction, in the end you have a short conclusion. But most people know about those ingredients. of the talk, but there's less familiarity with these points of the media formula for how to really communicate your point in a fuller way. Was that clear for your question?
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Thank you. And also we have Ryan in the task section. She says, "Dear teacher, if I spent 1 hour every day, still a year, by listening to podcasts, do you think it's helped me to get C1 level in A2 level? Thanks for answering."
Great
Like she means,
question.
yeah, just listening.
Yeah, I think that so there's two things. One, your resources, the podcast that you're listening to, they need to be at an appropriate level of difficulty for you. So they should be a difficulty level where you're still understanding maybe 80 to 90% of what's being said. If you're only understanding 5 or 10% of what's being said, then they're not benefiting you as much. So any language resource that you use, you want to make sure that you're understanding, let's say, above 75% of that resource, and that's when they're the most effective for you. So, and that's especially important for podcasts. It's that for listening, that you are listening to podcasts that are appropriate for your level, and that will make them much more beneficial. And there are sites you can find. You can Google, for example, podcasts for ESL, podcasts for English learners, where the English is simpler, where the English is slower, and that can be a good tool. I will say, to reach C1, you're going to have more skills than just listening. You will need to, at the very least, have the equivalent level of speaking ability. So, but ideally you want to be working on all of those 4 skills that someone mentioned earlier: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And to become a mature user of that language. Think of how children learn language. They listen first for a long time to their parents, and then they learn how to speak when they're 1 year old, 2 years old. And then when they're 4 or 5, they're learning how to read and write. It doesn't take us that long as adult learners necessarily to be using all 4 skills. We want to be using them sooner, but all 4 are important. But for me, for example, my reading in Kurdish is my reading and writing is way behind my speaking and listening. So I need to work to help them get caught up. But all 4 are really important. Podcasts can be a great tool, but I would say don't let them be the only thing, especially if nothing else. Make sure you have lots of speaking practice, like equal to your listening.
Yeah, thank you. And also in general, I'd like to I highly recommend Mamosta Andy's podcast for all of you guys if you want to improve your listening, because that's one of the most enjoyable podcasts. And also we have Suzanne Herish. She wants to say something. Yes, go ahead, please.
Good evening, guys.
Good evening and welcome.
I'm just here to say thank you, Mamosta Andy. He always gives me positive energy because, learning Kurdish is more difficult to an American person because English is international language. And we always learn from school and from the other place, but Kurdish is more difficult. Mamosta Andy makes me to feel like nothing impossible, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful, and yeah, that's all I want to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Sozan, for your encouragement. And I have to say, in return, I get so much positive energy from Kurdish students and other students of learning who are learning English. The energy and the passion for learning language that I experienced in Slimani and Erbil, I've not seen that same level of energy anywhere else in the world. There's a lot of passion, a lot of energy, and it encouraged me to keep going in my learning as well. But yeah, so thank you and for that encouragement, and hope that you keep going. And really, everyone on this call does not give up, but continues on in the long-term work of language learning. It's so rewarding if we don't give up. There's so many rewards waiting for us.
Yeah, thank you. And also, we have one question from our Facebook live stream from Mr. Ahmed Ali. He says, will you please enlighten us whether using mixed accent considered a problem or not?
Using a mixed accent?
Yeah, while speaking English or learning English.
Okay, this is my personal opinion. I don't think it's a problem. I believe that your goal as a language learner should be to be clear. So if you're mixed accents, or if you're only focusing on one accent and you're not clear, then I think that's a problem. But the goal is really to focus on being clear. And that is way more important than getting a certain accent perfect. I think there's too much focus on a particular accent, and that can distract students from this bigger goal of being clear communicators. So we lived in both Slimani and Erbil, and so when we were studying Sorani, we spoke in a mixed accent. I had a teacher teaching me Howleri for a couple of years. And to be honest, I really enjoyed being able to switch back and forth, even though when I was in Sulis, my friends would say, oh, you said that word just like a Howleri, and when I was in Howler, people would be like, you sound like you learned your Kurdish in Suli. It's fun. Accents are a lot of fun. But I think we should keep them in that area. We should keep accents in the area of it's not necessary to become a clear communicator, but they are a lot of fun. And so if you're pursuing accent just for enjoyment, for as sort of a passion project, then I think that's good. But don't put the pressure on yourself to have a perfect accent. Or if some words sound more British, some words sound more American, take the pressure off. It's okay. Americans love British accents. We think everyone who speaks with a British accent is more intelligent. So, if you've learned some British, that's okay. Actually, Americans like the British accent a lot. We think it's a really lovely accent.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, Mr. Ahmed, he's my best friend. I believe he's a big fan of British accent, so he's getting very motivated to learn more about British accent.
Yeah.
That's great. And also we have a chat in the chat section. Ryan, thanks for answering my question. I promise to study every day to be a good English speaker. So we have a promise here.
It's great. It's great.
Yeah.
Arsako 2 beats.
Also, Mamosta Andy, about accent, actually, I can't agree more, because I also believe being understandable is much more important than acquiring or trying hard to acquire a certain accent. I recently published a video on my Instagram, and I explained why being understandable is so important than acquiring a certain accent. Like I gave this example of Hollywood actors. We can see on movies that there are many actors that they can speak English perfectly. I mean, they are very fluent, but still their accent is not that good. So, if accent was important, they would hire a very like professional tutor to teach them a certain accent, but being understandable and having this fluency, I believe, is the core idea, the thing that you have to always try to reach this goal. This is how I think about accent, and this is how I think about fluency, because of course those actors are so rich and they are able, to hire the best tutors, the best teachers to teach them a certain accent. But it seems like accent is not that important. But what is important in conclusion is being able to speak fluently and also being understandable at the same time.
Yeah. One point. Thank you very much, Mr. Ari. I would like to actually mention something very important regarding accents. Okay, the matter is not about the fluency and how you could pronounce accents like native speakers. You will never reach native speakers, actually. That's the fact, okay? Because there's something we studied in medicine, vocal cord, okay? You will never reach that, the pronunciation like native speakers, whether British accent or American accent and so on. The matter is about how you could communicate, okay, in clear way. That's the point I would like to actually mention. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
And also, again, to the audience, we have Mr. Akko. Yes, go ahead, please.
I'm just wondering, how can I continue and not give up? I'm so bored to talking to myself 24/7 without speaking with anyone else. When I talk to you right now, I feel like I'm so stressful more than I speak to myself, because I've never speak to a native speaker or a person which know English very well. How can I continue? How can I not give up? So that's what I'm wondering.
That's a great question. And I think that, humans, we love relationships. We love friendships so much. We will do incredible things to connect with other people, with other humans. And so much of our language learning motivation, I believe, is really rooted in this desire for human connection. And so I do think, if at all possible, through the internet, or depending on where you live, if there are other English speakers in your city, expats who might be working there, I do believe that pursuing those relationships is one of the very best ways to find the motivation to keep going, because we are such relational beings. We love this connection with other people. So the internet has really opened doors for language learning relationships where people don't have to be living in the same country or on the same continent. And so I think that can be a very amazing motivation to keep going, is when you have friends who are English speakers and you have a conversation with them and you want to be able to talk about a topic, and you realize, I don't have what I need to talk about this topic yet, but I so badly want to tell my friend about this. So then you go and you get what you need to have that conversation. You go and you get the vocab and the grammar and you study. And then you can come back to them and you can talk about that important topic. Really, relationships, I think, are a very important piece, as well as just being reminded of the rewards of language learning on a regular basis. What are the benefits that we get from language learning? We have to remind ourselves of these things in order to not get discouraged on the days where we feel like our brain is just slow. We don't feel like we're learning. We feel like our progress has stopped and we're just stuck. So I think those are 2 points: pursue relationships with English speakers, and and make sure that you are reminding yourself of the benefits of language learning. Those two things can help you to not get discouraged, but to continue to have hope and encouragement and motivation for continuing to learn.
Yeah, I just need someone correct me when I'm wrong. So if you're talking to yourself, always you don't know what's wrong and what's correct. That's why I think I'm not improving if I'm talking to myself.
Yeah. Yeah, there again, I think if you're able to find a conversation partner and you tell them that at the beginning, you say, listen, I don't want you to feel shy or embarrassed about correcting me when I'm wrong. Actually, when we talk, would you please take notes of my mistakes? And then later on in the conversation, maybe not too many, maybe just 5 to 10, right? You don't want to be drowning in, 100 different mistakes. But take note if maybe 5 or 10 things I said in this conversation that were not fully correct. And would you give that to me? That can be very helpful. Very helpful. Yes.
Thank you so much, teacher. Thank you.
Yes, you're
I
very
really
welcome.
advise.
Yeah, thank you. And also we have Mr. Pero. Yes, Mr. Pero, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Hello again. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Andrew to give this presentation. To be honest, I have a couple of questions. The first one is about the different ways of the learning English, like the reading out loud, talking with yourself, and shadowing, and etc. So my question is, which one is the most important way to improve your English, especially your speaking? Because as you know that in language we have a couple of the ways, the inputs and the outputs. So the speaking is the output of the inputs. Like the more you read, the better your speaking will be. So which one is the first and the fastest way? This is the first question. The second question, I was just wondering that what are the challenges facing you while you are or you were trying to learn Kurdish language?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for those questions. I do believe that, again, because of the way that we are wired as humans to be relational creatures, the fastest way to learn another language is to be learning it with another person that you feel comfortable with and that you want to connect with. There's this joke out there, right? If you learn another language, someone might ask you, they say, oh, are you in love with someone from that country? Right? Is that why you learn this language? Well, the joke exists for a reason, because let's say that you meet someone in another country and you do, have romantic interest in them. I guarantee you are going to be a good language learner, right? There's this powerful human motivation that's there. And so it might not have to be a situation like that, but I've never seen people move faster than when they are in a regular tutoring situation with a native speaker. So a regular tutoring situation with a native speaker is the fastest that I've ever seen people move in language learning. And when they have the opportunity, not just with that, but the opportunity for relationships in that language, that is such amazing benzene, for learning. Those relationships propel us to do so much. So I think that's the ideal. Find a tutor who is a native speaker or a conversation partner who is even just advanced, ahead of you. They don't have to be a native speaker, but to bring in that human element, that social element is going to help you so much. What were the challenges that I faced in learning Kurdish? One, because Kurdish is a language, Sorani Kurdish is a language that is still being standardized. These decades, the language is in a process of standardization. there's some difficulty there. You might learn phrase that people use on the street, and then your teacher might tell you, well, that's not actually Kurdish. That's how I'm confused because everyone says it. I'll say, yes, I know, but that's actually from another language. You should be learning this Kurdipati word. But I'd say, but I've never heard that one, right? So there's some issues of standardization that made it challenging. And that also means there's not as many resources available. For example, 7-8 years ago, I wish there had been a podcast in Kurdish that I could have listened to. That would have been so wonderful. But it didn't exist yet, or I never was able to find one. So a lack of resources was difficult. And the grammar, I will say, Kurdish grammar is challenging for an English speaker. And I still have a long way to go in my Kurdish grammar. So those are some of the challenges that I faced, or that my friends faced, who are also Americans who are learning Kurdish.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mamosta Ari. Actually, I'd like to take the last question because we've been already more than 1 hour live. So who has the last question? Let me check the task section one more time. Thanks for answering my question. I promise, yeah, I read this one. Try to learn Kirkukian dialect as well. Kirkukian dialect. Just say Hayatım, that's Kirkukian.
Hayatım.
Yeah.
We had a tutor from Kirkuk, and she would sometimes tell us, she would say, okay, in the grammar, when your subject object markers, in the Sulaimani dialect, you kind of space things out, and in Kirkuki, we can smash them all together.
Exactly.
And it sounded a little more difficult to me, but it sounds like fun as well.
Yeah. We also use a lot of Arabic words in Kirkuk, that might be a little bit challenging, but at the end, it's a fun dialect, actually. People know when we're Kirkukian, when we say Hayatım in everywhere. Okay. Yeah. So I think it's time for wrapping up the presentation and for the session. And I'd like to thank everyone for being able to come here tonight, and also big thank for Mamosta Ari. Thank you so much. And I'm gonna, listen to this session again and again, because I believe there are still a lot of takeaways and information to take for me. And again, thank you so much. And if you have anything at the end you can add or not, I'm going to end the live stream.
I just want to say thank you again to Breaking Boundaries and to Mamosta Wrya, Mamosta Ari, and for really everyone who participated today. Your time is very valuable. So thank you for sharing it with me today, with us. I wish you all the best of success as you continue to learn and grow.
Yeah, thank you so much. I wish you the same. And thank you so much for Mamosta Wrya as well. Thank you so much, guys. Take care of yourself. Have a good night.
Bye, everyone.